I went from sleeping in my car to running a $3 million tech company, and I still don't own a suit. I never thought I'd be the one telling a story like this. 3 years ago, I was broke, living out of my 2006 Honda Civic in the parking lot of a 24-hour gym. My dinners were usually dollar menu burgers, and my shower was whatever the gym's water pressure could manage. I wasn't lazy. I was just stuck. My last job in retail barely covered rent, and when I got laid off, I had no safety net, no savings, no connections. Just an old laptop, a stubborn streak, and a feeling in my gut that if I didn't make a drastic change, I'd end up like this forever. One night, staring at the cracked ceiling of my car, I made myself a promise. This is the lowest I will ever be. From here, it only goes up. I had no clue that a single random Google search was about to change everything.
It happened around midnight. I was sitting in my car, trying to distract myself from the cold, scrolling through random search results on my old laptop. I typed in, "How to make money online with no experience." Buried between scammy ads and get-rich-quick nonsense, I found a forum thread where someone mentioned making extra cash by building simple websites for local businesses. They said they'd started with free tools, no coding skills, and just a few clients. It sounded almost too good to be true, but the part that stuck with me was this. You don't need to be the best. You just need to be willing to learn faster than the person next to you. That night, I bookmarked every free tutorial I could find. I didn't have a plan, but I had my first spark of hope in a long time.
For the next 2 weeks, my car became both my bedroom and my classroom. I'd park outside the gym for Wi-Fi, wrap myself in a blanket, and watch free YouTube tutorials until my eyes burned. I learned the basics of website design, how to use WordPress, even a little HTML and CSS. At first, it was brutal. I couldn't even figure out how to center a simple paragraph. I remember muttering at the laptop, "Why does this even exist if it doesn't work?" My hands were sore, my back ached, and sometimes I went hours without eating because I was too focused to stop. But every night, I got a little better, and slowly, I felt something I hadn't in months: hope. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to keep me awake, keep me coding, keep me dreaming about a future that wasn't inside my car.
One afternoon, I walked into a small coffee shop I used to visit. On the counter was a handwritten sign, "Follow us on Facebook for updates." The URL was barely legible. I asked the owner if they had a website, and she sighed. "We had one, but it's old and broken. We can't afford to hire anyone right now." Something in me snapped. "I can make you one, $100, I blurted. Her eyes widened. $100? She asked, cautiously. "If you can have it ready by next Friday, you've got a deal." I had no experience with clients, no portfolio, nothing, but I promised. Sitting in my car that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, I felt a mix of panic and excitement. This was my first real chance to turn what I had learned into actual income.
I worked like my life depended on it. Every free hour, I tweaked colors, adjusted layouts, fixed broken links. I even taught myself a few basic graphic design tricks to make the site look professional. The night before the deadline, I barely slept. I triple-checked every page, fearing the owner would see me as an amateur. When I delivered the site the next day, she stared at it for a long moment. Then she smiled. "This is better than I expected," she said, handing me a crisp $100 bill. I felt like I had won the lottery. Not because of the money, but because for the first time in months, I had proof I could do something real.
A week later, the coffee shop owner called me. "My friend owns a bakery. She wants you to make a site for her, too." That second client led to a third, then a fourth. Soon, I wasn't just building websites for coffee shops and bakeries. I had gyms, electricians, pet groomers lining up.
The money was still small, maybe $500, $800 a month, but it was enough to feel progress. More importantly, I had something that no one could take from me, a proof of skill. Each client taught me something new: patience, design tricks, negotiation, and slowly, I began to see a future beyond survival.
2 months later, I finally saved enough to rent a tiny studio apartment. Peeling paint, creaky floors, one small window that barely opened, but to me, it felt like a palace. Having a real desk and a reliable internet connection changed everything. I could work longer, take more clients, and finally experiment with tools that my old laptop in the car couldn't handle. I remember sitting at that desk, sipping instant coffee, thinking, I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm building something that might last. For the first time in years, sleep felt restful, and I can imagine a life where I didn't constantly fear losing everything overnight.
By the end of the first year, I had 15 regular clients and was making $3,000 a month. Modest, but a huge jump from my old life. I realized I couldn't do everything alone. I hired a freelance designer to help with graphics and a virtual assistant to handle emails. With their help, my little operation felt like a real business. I experimented with cold emails, local social media ads, and even small promotions. Not every attempt worked. Some clients ignored me, some laughed, but each success, no matter how small, became fuel. I could see the real potential now. My nights in the car felt like a distant memory, and every yes from a client was another step toward the life I'd promised myself I'd create.
About a year and a half into this grind, I got a message that changed everything. A mid-sized marketing agency in New York had seen one of my websites and wanted to hire me for a project. $10,000 up front. I nearly dropped my laptop in shock. The project was intimidating. They wanted a full e-commerce platform with custom graphics, payment integration, and responsive design for mobile. I hadn't done anything this big before. I remember pacing my tiny apartment, staring at the walls, and thinking, I either sink or swim, and there's no lifeboat. I worked day and night, fueled by instant coffee, anxiety, and pure determination. Every time I hit a problem, I Googled, experimented, or reached out to online communities for advice. When I finally delivered the completed site, their response left me shaking. This is exactly what we needed. Incredible work. That $10,000 payment wasn't just money. It was validation. I could handle big clients. I could scale. I could finally see a life beyond scraping by.
After that big project, I realized I couldn't rely on luck alone. I used part of the $10,000 to invest in myself: a faster laptop, premium software, and online courses that taught advanced web development and digital marketing strategies. I also set up a small home office, complete with a proper desk, ergonomic chair, and dual monitors. Suddenly, my studio apartment hustle felt professional. I could work smarter, not just harder, and take on even bigger clients without burning out. The first few weeks were overwhelming. I had to juggle ongoing clients, learning new tools, and redesigning my workflow. But each challenge pushed me closer to mastery. I could feel my confidence growing every day. For the first time, I believed I could become more than just a freelancer. I could build a real business. By the second year, I realized I couldn't handle the growing workload alone. I hired a junior developer and a part-time graphic designer. Training them took patience. There were mistakes, missed deadlines, and moments when I questioned whether I could lead a team. But slowly, things started to click. Delegating tasks freed me to focus on bigger projects and client acquisition. I began networking with other entrepreneurs, attending local meetups, and building relationships that eventually led to higher-paying contracts. I'll never forget the first time my team delivered a project without me touching a single line of code. Sitting in my office, watching them succeed, I felt a mix of pride and disbelief. This was no longer just a solo hustle. This was a business that could scale. Just when things were starting to feel steady, life threw me a curveball. One of our biggest clients suddenly pulled their contract due to budget cuts, and another delayed payment for 3 months. My income dropped almost in half overnight. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the empty inbox, heart pounding, wondering if all the progress I'd made was about to collapse. Panic clawed at me, but I forced myself to take a deep breath and map out a plan. I reached out to past contacts, pitched aggressively to new clients, and even took on smaller, less glamorous projects just to keep the cash flow alive. It was exhausting, stressful, and humbling, but by the end of the quarter, we had stabilized. That setback taught me a crucial lesson. Growth isn't a straight line, and resilience is just as important as talent.
After weathering that setback, something shifted. I realized I wasn't just surviving or scrambling anymore. I had a system, a team, and a growing reputation. I started pitching to larger clients, companies paying $20,000 or more for complex projects. The first big fish that said yes changed everything. I remember the email notification popping up on my laptop, my hands trembling as I read, "We'd like to move forward with your proposal. When can we start?" That moment, I felt the weight of every sleepless night, every car park coding session, every failure. It had all led to this. From that point on, growth became exponential. My team expanded, my client roster diversified, and for the first time, I felt in control of my financial destiny. The life I'd dreamed of wasn't a vague hope anymore. It was happening.
2 years into the journey, I finally hit a milestone I never thought possible. Consistent $15,000 to $20,000 months. I wasn't rich by celebrity standards, but for someone who had once slept in a car and lived on instant noodles, this felt like absolute freedom. I paid off debts, invested in a small savings account, and even booked a short vacation, something I hadn't done in years. More importantly, I could choose projects that excited me instead of taking anything out of desperation. I had control, stability, and the confidence that I could sustain this lifestyle. The feeling was surreal. Sitting on my balcony with a cup of coffee, I remembered the nights of struggle and realized every small win, every failure, every ounce of persistence had been worth it. I wasn't just making money. I was living proof that you can rebuild your life from scratch.
Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. From sleeping in my car to running a thriving business, every struggle taught me something invaluable: resilience, resourcefulness, and the power of relentless focus. If there's one lesson I want to share, it's this: don't underestimate the small steps. The first client, the first late-night coding session, the first setback, they all build momentum. And don't be afraid to invest in yourself, even when the risk feels terrifying. Most importantly, remember that failure is part of the journey. Every mistake, every no, every lost client was a lesson that eventually led me to a yes that mattered. Today, I'm not just financially stable, I'm confident, independent, and excited about the future. And if I can do it, so can anyone willing to fight for their dreams step by step.